The scent of rain and fresh ink was my kind of perfume. I was curled on my sofa, a sketch pad balanced on my knees, adding delicate flourishes to a logo design. My apartment was a comfortable mess. Throw blankets, a mug of gone cold tea, and the soft gray light of a lazy afternoon filtering through the windows. But inside, I was glowing, wrapped in the golden afterglow of the past weekend. Mark and I had spent it at a secluded vineyard. I could still feel the phantom press of his hand on the small of my back as he guided me through the rows of grapes, the way he'd laughed, full and unguarded, when I'd gotten a splash of wine on my nose. 6 months. It had been 6 months of that kind of perfect. He remembered the little things. That I hate the sound of polystyrene, that I put hot sauce on my eggs, that my dream was to design a book cover for a major publisher. He made me feel seen. The doorbell rang, a sharp, intrusive sound that jolted me from my reverie. Probably a package. I padded to the door, my socks whispering against the hardwood floor, a smile still playing on my lips. I pulled it open, expecting the familiar uniform of a delivery driver. Instead, a woman stood there. She was stunning, impeccably dressed in a tailored coat, her hair a sleek, dark sheet. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine ad for a life I'd never lead. "Chloe?" Her voice was calm, low, but it carried an intensity that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. "Yes? Can I help you?" I tightened my grip on the door frame, a prickle of unease cutting through my cozy mood. "My name is Sloane." She didn't smile. Her eyes, a sharp, intelligent shade of hazel, scanned my face, taking in my messy bun and faded band t-shirt. "I believe we're seeing the same man, Mark Davies." The words didn't make sense at first. They were like a foreign language, nonsensical syllables thrown at me. My brain fumbled, trying to piece them together, seeing the same man. Mark Davies. My Mark. My heart didn't just sink. It plummeted. It felt like the floor had vanished, and I was in free fall. The world tilted on its axis, the colors of my hallway bleeding into a nauseating swirl. That's not possible," I stammered, my voice thin and reedy. "You must be mistaken. I wish I were." Her composure was unnerving. She wasn't hysterical. She was factual. She pulled out her phone, her movements precise. "We've been together for 8 months. He told me he was on a business trip this past weekend, in the city." She showed me the screen. It was a photo of them, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, standing in front of a sleek, modern art gallery. He was wearing the same cashmere sweater he'd worn when we'd gone to the cinema last Thursday. My mouth went dry. "That doesn't prove—" I started, but my protest died in my throat as she swiped. The next photo was a selfie taken in a bathroom. His bathroom. I recognized the distinctive geometric tiling behind her reflection, the same tiles I'd stared at while borrowing his toothpaste just a week ago. A cold dread, thick and heavy, began to solidify in my stomach. Then came the final blow. A screenshot of their text thread, the same affectionate pet names, the same future-faking promises. "Can't wait to take you to that little coastal town I told you about." He'd said the exact same thing to me. The timeline overlapped perfectly, a sickening tapestry of lies woven between the two of us. The sketchpad I'd been holding clattered to the floor. The betrayal was a physical blow, sucking the air from my lungs. I felt the hot, sharp sting of tears, and I hated myself for them, for the vulnerability in front of this flawless stranger. I was just another cliché, the foolish girl who believed in fairy tales. "I'm not here to fight you, Chloe," Sloane said, her voice softening a fraction, though her gaze remained analytical. "I'm not here to scream or cry. Frankly, that seems like a waste of energy." "Then what are you here for?" I whispered, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to hold the pieces together. "I'm here to recruit you." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "Recruit me for what?" "Look at you. she said, her eyes sweeping over my apartment, my work, me. You're creative. You're clearly kind. He goes for that. Look at me. She gestured to her own pristine appearance. I'm detail-oriented, connected. He goes for that too. He thinks we're manageable alone, in our separate boxes. But together, a small, dangerous smile touched her lips. Together, we have his entire playbook. The sheer, audacious insanity of it should have made me shut the door. But a tiny, furious part of me, the part that felt used and stupid and shattered, sparked to life. Together for what? I asked, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. To key his car? To put sugar in his gas tank? Sloane's smile widened. It was terrifying and brilliant. Nothing so crude. I'm proposing we become the partner project. We don't expose him with a screaming match in a coffee shop. We expose who he is. A hollow man building relationships on lies. We orchestrate a scenario where his entire house of cards collapses in on itself. In public. He'll never see it coming. The partner project. The name was cold, calculated, and perfect. It was the antithesis of everything Mark's sweet lies had been. This wasn't about heartbreak. It was about justice. A surgical, devastating strike. I looked at Sloane, this formidable stranger who had walked into my life and detonated a bomb, only to offer me a blueprint from the rubble. My hands were still trembling, my chest ached, but the freefall had stopped. My feet were on solid, if dangerous, ground. The old Chloe, the one who believed in vineyard weekends and whispered promises, would have said no. But that Chloe was gone, left in the wreckage of the last 5 minutes. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the air tasting of salt and possibility. Okay, I said, the word feeling both like a surrender and a declaration of war. Tell me the plan. As I closed the door behind her, the silence in my apartment was different. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was charged. The world hadn't ended. It had just become infinitely more complicated, and for the first time since I'd opened that door, I felt a flicker of something other than despair. It felt like power. The inside of my head felt like a beehive that had been kicked. For 3 days, I moved through my life in a daze. I'd pick up a pencil and forget what I was supposed to be drawing. I'd start water for tea and find it boiled dry an hour later. Mark's texts, once little jolts of lightning that lit up my day, now felt like suspiciously timed probes. Thinking of you, sweetheart. Crazy day at the office. Call you tonight? Every word felt rehearsed, a line delivered to an audience of one, while another audience, Sloane, was likely receiving a matinee performance. Our first official meeting of the partner project was at a quiet, upscale tea shop I would never have chosen for myself. It was all minimalist decor and hushed tones, the kind of place where you felt the need to whisper your secrets. Sloane was already there, seated at a corner table, a porcelain cup looking impossibly delicate in her hands. She had a folder. Of course she had a folder. I've started a timeline, she said by way of greeting, sliding a printed spreadsheet toward me. It was color-coded. My anxiety, which had been buzzing, now settled into a dull, impressed terror. We started with the facts, cross-referencing our stories like detectives on a case that broke our own hearts. It was brutal and bizarrely hilarious in the darkest way possible. He told me his favorite book was The Labyrinth of Solitude, I confessed, stirring my own tea, a chai that suddenly tasted like ash. He said it changed his perspective on life. Sloane let out a short, sharp laugh that turned a few heads. She leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. He told me he couldn't get through it, said it was pretentious and impenetrable. We stared at each other across the table. The shared anger was still there, a hot coal in my chest, but for a moment, it was eclipsed by a flicker of something else. Shared, bewildered amusement. We were archaeologists, piecing together the skeleton of a man who didn't actually exist. The Chloe-shaped Mark and the Sloane-shaped Mark were two different creatures, and the real one was the hollow space in between. What about kids? I asked, bracing myself. He can't wait to be a father, Sloan said flatly. He wants two, a boy and a girl. A cold wave washed over me. He told me he wasn't sure he was cut out for the responsibility, that he liked our freedom. The silence that followed was heavy. This wasn't just about dating. He was selling us entirely different futures. The charade was so much deeper than I'd imagined. The plan, as Sloan laid it out, was intricate and terrifying. The stage was a charity gala she was helping to organize, an event where Mark, as a sponsor, was expected to shine. Our role was to tarnish that shine, publicly and irrevocably. "We need to get him off balance," Sloan explained, her eyes gleaming with strategic fire. "I'll be his date. You'll be there too, with a date of your own. Someone who will make him visibly, uncontrollably jealous." "Who? I'm not exactly swimming in eligible bachelors right now." The thought was laughable. "My brother, Liam," she said, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. "He's solid, and he owes me a favor. He'll be your +1. The following Friday, I found myself at Sloan's impeccably curated apartment to brief Liam. I was a bundle of nerves, clutching a bottle of wine like a lifeline. Sloan opened the door, and behind her, a man was kneeling by her bookshelf, attempting to fix a wobbly leg. "Liam, she's here," Sloan said. He looked up, and my brain, for a second, short-circuited. Where Mark was all polished edges and calculated charm, Liam was grounded. He had Sloan's same intelligent eyes, but his were warmer, flecked with gold, and hinting at a ready smile. He wore a simple faded band t-shirt and jeans, and his hands, currently holding a screwdriver, were calloused and capable. He stood up, and he was tall, with a quiet presence that filled the space without demanding it. "So you're the one helping my sister execute her master plan," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble. He wiped his hands on his jeans before offering one to shake. His grip was firm, real. I guess I am," I managed, feeling incredibly silly in my nice dress. "The guy's a piece of work," Liam stated, his gaze steady and sincere. "That's a generous description," I replied, and was rewarded with a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Sloan busied herself with glasses, and Liam went back to fixing the shelf. I watched him work, the focused ease of his movements. It was so different from Mark's performative intensity. "Sloan told me you're a designer," Liam said, not looking up from his task. "She showed me your portfolio online. The branding for that indie bookstore, it's really good. You captured the soul of the place." I blinked, stunned. No one, least of all Mark, had ever used the word soul in relation to my work. Mark's compliments were always about how successful it looked or how much money a client had paid. "Thank you," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "That means a lot." He glanced up, holding my gaze for a moment too long. "She also said you're the calm in this storm she's brewing. That's saying something." A blush crept up my neck, hot and undeniable. I looked away, flustered. This was not part of the plan. The plan was about anger and revenge, not about kind-eyed woodworkers with disarming compliments. The night before the gala, Mark called. My heart hammered against my ribs as I answered, putting him on speaker. Sloan was on the line with us, silent, a ghost in the machine. "Chloe, baby, I'm so sorry," he began, his voice a masterclass in weary disappointment. "I have a massive family emergency. My aunt, she's taken a bad fall. I have to drive out of state first thing in the morning. I'm going to have to miss the gala." The lie was so smooth, so effortless. I pictured Sloan in her own home, hearing the same performance, and a cold fury settled over me. "Oh, Mark, that's terrible," I said, my voice dripping with a concern I didn't feel. "Is there anything I can do?" No, just your voice is a comfort," he said, and I felt physically sick. We hung up, and a second later, my phone buzzed. A text from Sloan. He just told me his biggest client is having a catastrophic emergency, and he has to fly out tonight. Sent me the same, "Your voice is a comfort" line. Unbelievable. Sitting alone in the dark of my apartment, the final shred of any doubt or residual affection for Mark evaporated. He was a script, not a man, and we were about to rewrite his ending. I looked at the gorgeous, floor-length emerald gown hanging on my closet door, my armor for the night. And for a fleeting, confusing moment, my mind didn't conjure Mark's face. It conjured Liam's, and the steady, reassuring promise in his eyes. This was still about revenge, but for the first time, it also felt terrifyingly like it might be about a new beginning. The ballroom was a galaxy of crystal and chatter, a world of effortless wealth I only ever visited in movies. My emerald gown, which had felt like armor in my bedroom, now felt like a costume. I clutched Liam's arm, his solid presence the only thing keeping me from floating away on a tide of pure panic. "Breathe, Chloe," he murmured, his voice a warm anchor in the sea of noise. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad, not a room full of people eating tiny quiches." A shaky laugh escaped me. What if he doesn't take the bait? What if he just laughs? Then we'll have a good laugh with him, and he'll still be the man who got outsmarted by two brilliant women, he said, his eyes crinkling. There's no scenario where he wins tonight. I looked up at him. Truly looked. In his tailored tuxedo, he looked less like a woodworker and more like a prince from some forgotten, honest fairy tale. His hand covered mine on his arm, giving it a reassuring squeeze. The gesture was so simple, so genuine, it made my throat tighten. Then I saw them. Across the room, Mark stood with his hand on Sloane's lower back, a picture of possessive pride. She was a vision in icy blue, her expression unreadable. My stomach swooped, a nauseating roller coaster drop. "Showtime," Liam said softly, and guided me through the crowd. Mark's eyes found me first. The sequence of emotions that flashed across his face was more satisfying than any applause. First, confusion. Then, dawning horror as he registered Liam by my side. Finally, a forced waxen smile as we stopped before them. "Chloe," he said a little too loudly, "what a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here." His gaze flickered to Liam, a nervous tick. "And you are?" "Liam," he said, extending a hand. His grip, I knew, would be firm. "Sloane's brother." Mark's smile tightened. "Ah, a family affair." He was floundering, his script torn to shreds. Sloane's voice, cool and clear as crystal, cut through the tension. "How interesting," she said, her eyes locked on Mark. "You were just telling me how you spent last weekend helping your mother, Mark. But Chloe, your social media story showed you and him at that lovely vineyard. It looked absolutely divine." She took a sip of her champagne. The weather looked much better there than it was here. The air around our little group went cold. Mark's face paled. Yes, the weekend was segmented," he stammered, a pathetic, flimsy word. This was our cue, the coordinated takedown, the moment we'd plotted in that quiet tea shop. I was supposed to mention Lisbon to watch him squirm as Sloane confronted him with his contradictory dreams. But as I opened my mouth, I saw it. The sheer, pathetic emptiness in his eyes. The panic of a cornered animal with no real substance to defend itself. The grand, public evisceration we'd planned suddenly felt cheap. Like we'd be stooping to his level, creating a scene that would only make us look vengeful, while he would play the victim. I met Sloane's eyes. I saw the same realization dawning in them. The fury was gone, replaced by a profound, weary pity. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Just then, a portly, important-looking man clapped Mark on the shoulder. "Davies, excellent turnout this year, you must be thrilled." This was it, the professional arena, the perfect stage for his ruin. Mark seized the lifeline, his politician's smile snapping back into place. "Mr. Henderson, yes, the foundation has really outdone itself." Sloane didn't miss a beat. She turned her terrifyingly polite smile to the man. "Mr. Henderson, so lovely to see you. You must excuse Mark." She placed a gentle, almost affectionate hand on Mark's arm, her voice a silken dagger. "He seems to be having a bit of a personal crisis. Something about his schedule being double booked for the last 6 months." She then leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for Mark, but carrying perfectly to Liam and me. "It's over. We know everything. And frankly, you're not worth the rest of our performance." The dismissal was absolute. It was colder and more devastating than any screamed accusation. She hadn't exposed his lies to his client. She had simply revealed him as a man not even worth the effort of exposing. She had rendered him irrelevant. Mr. Henderson gave a confused, uncomfortable nod and melted back into the crowd. Mark was left standing there, utterly alone, his face a frozen mask of humiliation. The power he'd held over us, the power of his lies, had evaporated into the glittering air. We had simply walked away from him. And that's what we did. The three of us turned, a united front, and walked out of the ballroom, leaving the ghost of Mark Davies behind us. Outside, the night air was cool and clean, washing away the stifling perfume of the gala. The three of us stood under the porte-cochere, the silence between us heavy with a shared, exhausted victory. "You didn't give the final speech," I said to Sloane, my voice quiet. "The one about Lisbon." Sloane looked at me, and for the first time, her guard was completely down. Her eyes were soft, a little sad, but clear. "We won. We didn't need to burn him at the stake. We just had to show him we held the match." She glanced at Liam, then back at me, a genuine, warm smile finally gracing her features. "And I saw you two. Some new beginnings are more important than old endings." Liam's hand found mine again, his fingers lacing through them. This time, it wasn't for show.